Thank you so much. Thank you. It's so good to be here. I'm not used to being in a place that has this many Seahawk jerseys. So I don't know if I should rebuke that spirit or do an altar call or do a salvation altar call. So if you're wearing a jersey, come forward. Jesus wants to save you. Um, It's a little bit odd. So, anyways, it is such an honor to be here, and really is an honor to come and have drawn so much from your church. So encouraged by what God's doing here. Absolutely adore your pastors and their entire family. And for us, it is relational. It's what we go after. We have had too many calories. This is not good. The first place we went, Matt's like, you got to go try this thing called pig candy. At where is it at? At Lulu's, and it's pretty much just bacon soaked in like maple syrup and brown sugar, and I don't know what it was, but it was unbelievable. It was so good and fat-free. If you have your Bibles, get them out, Ephesians chapter 2. I want to just jump in if I can so we can get some good time this morning. Just quick history, married, be 20 years in December to the same woman. And I've got 3 kids, an 18-year-old daughter who's in college right now, a 15-year-old daughter who's a freshman in high school, and a 12-year-old son who is a 6th grader. Been in full-time ministry since I was 19. But 4 years ago, we moved to Sacramento. And 3 years ago, we just celebrated our 3-year anniversary for the church last month, and been an unbelievable time. What God's doing, it's just, there's a lot going on in the world, but I will tell you this, it is a good time to be alive. And this is not just cheerleading for you. God is on the move in the nations of the earth in an unprecedented way. And what he's doing around the world, what he's doing in America is really unprecedented. So I'm just happy to be alive and a part of it. And I just want a seat at the table, what God's doing. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19. If you want to turn there, Ephesians chapter 2. I'm going to land in Ephesians today, both Ephesians chapter 2, and then we'll turn right in just a few minutes and go to Ephesians chapter 4. Let me read this, Ephesians chapter 2. Paul writes, "Now therefore you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God." He's talking about those who have been redeemed, those who have been saved by the blood of the Lamb. "Now therefore you are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members," and here's the phrase I want to talk about, "of the household of God." I believe deeply in the local church. I have a deep, deep belief and love for the local church, and very much believe in its role for the individual believer as well as its role for cities and what God wants to do there. If you were to really ask me at my core what I'm about, I want to see revival. That's what I want to see. I want to see cities awaken, nations awaken. I want to see a harvest come in. But I just believe that the local church is the vehicle for that revival. I believe that the local church is the vehicle through which God operates. But in order for the church to have its full impact, I believe that we need to have a little bit of a fresh look at it. I don't know if you've ever looked at something and had a hard time kind of making it out until you kind of just change your angle slightly. You get a little bit of a new perspective on it, and you can see it more clear. And I feel like God wants to shift our perspective just slightly to change the way that we see it when it comes to the local church. And it's really around this issue, that the church is a family, not a business. Now, I know that most everybody would agree with me on that statement, that the church is a family, not a business, but I'm not sure we fully follow that line of thinking out all the way because it requires something from my life. This has always been God's plan. God's plan has always been to have a family on the earth that represents who he is to the world and who his heart is as a father. Always. He did not send his son to die on a cross so that he could gain employees. This is not a multi-level marketing thing that's going on where God, where there's employees and downlines, and God sent his son so that he could redeem relationship with sons and daughters who would then in turn represent who he is to the world, that they would represent his heart to the world as a father. And we become sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, because we have a father in heaven. And our lives should reflect and look like Jesus, not because I'm an employee, but because I'm a son, because you're a daughter. Years ago, my I had a friend when his son was younger. His son must have been 2 or 3. And my friend's a pretty big guy, 6'4", he's probably 215 at the time. And one day he was watching his son, and his son stood up, and his son grunted. And he was looking at his son going, that is so odd. Why would you do that? So he watched his son over the next few days, and every time his son got up, his son like grunted. And he's like, why is my son doing that? And then one day my friend was sitting in a chair watching TV for a while, and when he got up, he did that kind of old man stretch grunt thing that we do. He got up and he was like, ugh! And then he realized, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. Like every time he stood up, he'd do that kind of grunt stretch. Now his son, who's 2 or 3, started doing it. Like this is like, so his son is literally looking at his dad. Every time his dad gets up, he grunts, stretches, so he thinks, that's what men do. That's just what men do. Men grunt when they stand up. So as a little 2-year-old, little 3-year-old, he'd get up, he'd be like, eh, because that's just I guess that's what men do, therefore that's what we do. This has been the whole plan. When people ask us, why do you love people? I've been watching my dad, and he loves people. So I guess that's what we do. We love people. Why do you forgive? Well, I've been watching my dad, and he forgives. Why are you kind? Why are you generous? Why are we generous with not only our finances, but with the rest of our life? Because I'm watching Dad, and I realize, oh, that's what we do. We're generous. That's who we are. And so it's always been, the plan has always been to have a family on the earth that represents who he is to people. That walks that thing out. That his sons and daughters, we want to look like him because he's our Father. It's always been what it is. But this thinking that the church as a family matters, and your perspective has to shift a little bit. And sometimes our perspective shifts and we don't even realize that we view something a certain way. The reality is that how I view something determines how I interact with it. So how I view something determines how I'm going to engage with it and how I'm going to interact with it. So if I view something improperly, or if I view something not correctly, then I'm going to engage with it and I'm going to interact with it in a wrong way, and I will get frustrated. Many people in the church, again, whatever background you come from in this room, many people approach the church they see the church in a way that is not how God intended it, and therefore when they interact with it or they engage with it, they become frustrated and confused because they're engaging with it in a way that they see it, which is wrong. I'm a big customer service guy. Now, again, this may just be because I'm an American and I believe that customer service is my God-given American right. But and I don't know if any of you traveled to like Europe where they're horrible at customer service. But I'm a big customer service guy, and I'm not the guy that throws a fit if I don't get it. I just remember it. So when I go to a restaurant and I sit down at a table and it takes them a long time to come find me and say, you want something to drink or can I get you some bread? I don't get mad. I just remember it and don't come back. If I ask them, hey, is there any way you could, please, here, I'd like this dish, and please don't have any tomatoes in it. Because biblically, I think I can prove that tomatoes are the Antichrist. So if I'm like, please don't put any tomatoes in there, if they bring the dish and they put tomatoes in it, again, I don't throw a fit. I just push them off to the side, and I don't come back. I remember, And so, customer service, same thing in a hotel. If I come back in the afternoon and the room's not clean, I just, I like good customer service. But it becomes a problem if I have that mindset when I come into my house. This is where problems start to set in for us. That if I approach my house as if it's a restaurant, first of all, let me say this. I'm too scared of my wife to do this. So can I just say real quick, I have a fear of my wife that does not involve this. So can you imagine if I came into my house, sat down at my table, and then sat there for 10 minutes a little bit frustrated that nobody's come up and offered me water or wanted to see if I'd like some bread? And 10 minutes in, I'm like, is anybody going to bring me some water? And all around the house, all I hear is, no, get up, get your own water. I cannot believe this. What? It's problematic. It doesn't work. Can you imagine if my wife brings a meal out that she cooked that night and it had tomatoes in it, and I'm like, I have specifically asked for no tomatoes, and I get up and I'm like, I will take my business elsewhere. I am going somewhere else. I will never come back here again. It doesn't work, right? It's problematic. Because my house is not a restaurant, it's a house. And if I view it as a restaurant, problems begin to set in. I don't show up after work and wonder why my clothes are still on my floor and my bed is still unmade. I'm not like, why didn't anybody make my bed and put my clothes away? Because it's not a hotel. It's a house. Now, again, we appreciate the concept and we long for the church being a family, but we don't always realize that we don't approach it that way. We don't approach it that it's not a restaurant, it's a house. It's a house where you find family and you get connected and you serve and you get real with one another and you get vulnerable and you get raw and people in your life and it's messy. This is what it is. This is what it is. This is why for us, we tell our church all the time that every time, that if it's a family, then every time we gather, it's Thanksgiving. Every time we gather, we want it to be Thanksgiving. And here's why I use that analogy, because I grew up in a home, again, not to get into my story, but very dysfunctional family. So I had no connection with any of my grandparents, very small, very little connection with aunts and uncles and cousins. So holidays in my house was me, my sister, my mom, and my dad. That was holidays. And it was, at Thanksgiving, it would be us four at the table. Christmas, I don't know if any of you grew up in this type of home, but Christmas, we would sit down, and I'm sorry for using you as a girl, but my sister would open up her gift, and we'd sit and look at it and talk about it and discuss it, write a thank you note about it, and then we go to my dad, and he'd open his gift, and we'd talk about it and discuss it and think about it, and it was always that type of thing. And then I married my wife. And my wife comes from the opposite family of mine. Like, it was just us four. For her, not only does she have a big family, but there's multiple marriages and step and half and cousins, and we love all of them. We're connected to all of them. But it's just chaos. And I remember the first Christmas I went to I'm like 19 years old. I'm just dating this woman. I want to marry her. So I go and I visit her family. And it's Christmas, and there's like 40 people in the living room, which was already a little bit like, oh my gosh. And there's 40 people, and I'm trying to figure out who people are as well. I'm getting to know them, and so there's a guy, I'm like, who's that guy over there? She goes, oh, that's my brother Dave. I said, oh, your brother Dave, is that your dad's side? Is that, your stepmom's side? Is that? And she goes, well, neither, I guess. I said, what do you mean, neither? How is he your brother? I am not making this up. She goes, I don't know. He just started showing up in high school and hanging out. And we just started calling him brother, and he's been here ever since. I'm like, that's not even legal. That's not legal. You can't, what? So this is the environment we're in, right? And then they started opening gifts, and I get my gift, and I start opening my gift, and I look up, and 10 other people were opening gifts at the same time. And I'm like, whoa! We haven't opened up my gift yet. We haven't talked about it. We haven't discussed it. We haven't wrote. Like, you can't. It was just pure chaos. But because of this family environment, what's very quickly become my favorite holiday is Thanksgiving. Hands down, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. It's a day where we come. It's cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and my brother-in-laws come in. I don't see them all the time. We sit and just talk football all day long, and it's become my favorite holiday. And so I tell our church, listen, whenever we gather, it's Thanksgiving. But here's the thing about Thanksgiving, when it's really family. When I was 19, probably around 19 or 20 years old, I came to the first Thanksgiving with my wife. And I showed up, and at Thanksgiving, everybody's doing something, and somebody handed me a bag of potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, and a potato peeler. And I was like, I guess I'm going to peel potatoes today. So I peeled potatoes and did them all. And next year, I showed up for Thanksgiving again. They handed me a bag of sweet potatoes, and yams. I'm like, I guess I'm going to peel potatoes. And I peeled potatoes again. All of a sudden, I became the guy who peels potatoes. I am 41 years old. I am a grown man. I am a lead pastor of a thriving church. Guess what I did last Thanksgiving? I peeled potatoes. And I've gotten so good at it, and people have bought me potato peelers from Japan that I use now. I bring my own potato peeler to Thanksgiving now. I'm thinking about making a holster for it. But I show up to Thanksgiving, and I'm like, all right, where are the potatoes? And I peel potatoes, and I love it. I love it. Right, I love it. I don't have a passion for potato peeling. I don't have a vision for potato peeling. Totally. Okay. I may have grown into that, but that's not the point. I don't have a passion for potato peeling, but you know what I have a passion for? I have a passion for family. And so it doesn't matter if I'm peeling potatoes. What I'm doing isn't even the issue in that moment. I love that I'm doing it with my brothers. I love that I'm doing it with cousins. I love that I'm doing it with grandparents. That's what I love. And if peeling potatoes is what I do in order to make this the best Thanksgiving ever, then so be it. That's what I'll do. It doesn't, like it's, everybody just jumps in and contributes because it's family. Because it's family. And I love doing it. I look forward to it. I really do. I'm like, because I just want to do it with people. And I want this to be the best Thanksgiving we've ever had. So we jump in because that's how family thinks. I don't approach a restaurant like that. I don't show up to a restaurant and be like, hey, listen, I saw you have mashed potatoes on the menu. Do you need some people? I brought my own potato peeler. Would you need me to go back and help at all? Like, I don't think like that. I don't think at a restaurant, I want this to be the best dinner everybody in this restaurant has had, because it's not family. But the church is family, and here's the crazy thing. Do you know what? Nobody even thanks me at Thanksgiving. And here's the crazy thing. The favorite dish, the absolute favorite dish at Thanksgiving is Granny's 95 years old. She doesn't make it anymore. She's passed it on. She's 95, but it's a sweet potato casserole. And this is what everybody wants. And they all, in fact, wherever the sweet potato casserole is, that's where you start the line. Like, you know, it's because you got to get there first because it may be gone. So everybody just starts the line there, you know. And everybody's like eating the sweet potato casserole, and this all happened in my head. And I'm like, you're welcome. Are you enjoying that sweet potato casserole? You liking it? Yeah, you're welcome. Those potatoes did not peel themselves. But nobody even thanks me. And guess what? I don't even care. I don't care if anybody thanks me. I just love that we're all enjoying this gathering together. You know what else happens in family? There's no leadership ladder that happens in family. These are the mind shifts that have to happen. I don't peel potatoes while I'm looking at the turkey carver thinking, one day. One day. Started at the bottom, but one day. That's where I'm going. Like this is a mindset that is in the business world. It's not in the family world. That's why this thing has to shift, and that's why I challenge our church. Like, listen, jump in. In fact, I would say this. When it comes to serving in the church, when you really think about it as a family, it's not like we need bodies. It's not like we need more workers. It's just the most natural thing in the world for family to jump in and contribute. It's just what you do. In fact, it's kind of not normal if you don't. So like, hey, we need help in kids ministry. Well, great, let me jump in because I want to make this the great thing, the best Thanksgiving ever. This is going to sound like maybe heretical, but I don't even think you have to have a call for children's ministry. You just have to have a call to family. You have to have a call to seeing this become the best ever. You're all quiet on me, but there's three types of people that don't serve at Thanksgiving. My kids that are little. And I'm not mad at them about that. I really am not mad at them about that. I'm not like on them that they're not setting up tables to everybody else. They're running, they're goofing around, they're playing, they're with their cousins. It's great. Now, I don't want him to stay there, but I'm okay. He's 10, he can do that. The guest doesn't. There's a lot of people in this church right now. You're trying to figure out, is this my family or is this not my family? That's great. There's no problem with that. I would never expect a guest to serve on Thanksgiving. No, you sit there. We got you. Right? It's not a bad thing. But there's a third category of people that don't serve, and it's usually an uncle. It's the uncle that sits on the couch that randomly just yells for people to bring him stuff. You know, somebody bring me a drink, and I can't get up. And that's odd. Like, that's odd. That's the immature uncle. Some of you are feeling convicted right now because you're the immature uncle at Thanksgiving. But But when we start thinking like a family, I was born into a household of God. I was redeemed into a household of God, which means I've got to change the way I think when I approach the church. This is a family. We're here to connect with our Father. We are here to connect with others. We're here to bring people into the family with our Father. God sets the lonely in what? Into families, not into business structures. But this requires that everybody shift a little bit on this thinking and go, okay, where in my life am I approaching the church as if it's a business or a restaurant rather than it's a family? And I'll go peel potatoes, doesn't matter, whatever, like it's fine. I love to peel potatoes because I love being with family. Now here's the big one that I want to spend some time on is, what is the purpose of the church when it comes to your life? Let me read this in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11 and through 15. It's actually talking about the fivefold ministry. So when we say the fivefold ministry, we're talking about church leadership structure. These are 5 offices or roles of leaders. It's the apostle, prophet, pastor, evangelist, teacher. And Paul actually says that these have been given to us as gifts. So all of us have been given gifts in the form of these leaders in our life. And then Paul's going to write and say what the purpose of them for, why they've been given. Listen to this. And he himself, talking about Jesus, gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, and some pastors and teachers. And here's why. For the equipping of the saints, for the work of the ministry, or what I would call the normal Christian life, for the edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come to the unity of faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, or one translation says to a mature man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. I'm going to stop there because I'm not going to preach on this. But what he's talking about is the concept of sanctification. Justification is when I got saved, I legally now have right standing with God. It's a one-time act. I'm legally right before God. Sanctification is the work of the Holy Spirit in my life that's transforming me day in, day out to look more and more like Jesus, which is the goal, okay? So, to a mature man, this looks like Jesus, to the measure and stature of the fullness of Christ. And here it is, that we should no longer be children, tossed to and fro and carried about with every wind of doctrine by the trickery of men and the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting, but speaking the truth in love may grow up in all things into him who is the head, Christ. Here's what the fivefold has been given for, to mature your life. The fivefold has been given, and the church's role is to equip you, to make sure you're equipped for the Christian life, to make sure you're encouraged, and then to make sure you're maturing, to make sure you're no longer children, to make sure you grow up into all things Christ. This is the role of that. Now, why is family important with that? Because when I view the church as a family, the natural outflow and rhythm of healthy family is maturing. It's what naturally happens in the flow of family. This is the responsibility of family is to mature sons and daughters. Now, again, the goal of the church is not to raise up sons and daughters. It's ultimately to raise up mothers and fathers. So the natural flow of family is that there's sons and daughters who mature and become fathers and mothers, who have sons and daughters who mature and become fathers and mothers, who have sons and daughters who mature. That's the natural flow of family that is not in other organizations. The natural flow of family, what it's required in family is maturity, that you would be maturing. You don't have to be full grown. I'm not upset at my 12-year-old for not being 35. But the goal is to mature who they are, physically healthy, spiritually healthy, emotionally healthy. And one of the main signs of maturity that I really believe is a prophetic word for the body of Christ right now, that I think God is absolutely shouting this right now to the American church, is these 2 words, personal responsibility. One of the main marks or one of the main signs of maturity is this issue of personal responsibility. It's very interesting because planting a church 3 years ago and people coming, not all of them were unsaved people. These are people that have been in church, that are looking for a tribe, that are wanting to check things out. And it was very interesting seeing people. There's a fly up here that I need some, chopsticks to grab. Karate Kid. So planning this church was very interesting that you begin to see, and we don't know we're doing this, right? But we have this concept that as believers, we're not looking for the fivefold ministry to mature us and equip us. We're looking for the fivefold ministry to do our Christian life for us. So when you became a follower of Jesus, you're a follower of Jesus. As a follower of Jesus, there's certain things that he's asking of me. Pray. Pray for the sick. Give to the poor. Be generous. Share your faith. Disciple people. Get in community. These are all things that he asks of me. And what happens sometimes is when I approach the church as a business, I'm looking for the church to do something that I'm called to do. So and when I go to a restaurant, I want you to cook a meal for me. Do that for me. I'm not asking you at a restaurant to show me how to cook a meal. I'm asking you to cook a meal for me. And so sometimes we don't know it, but we come to the church and what I want is for leadership to build something that accomplishes my Christian life for me. To build something that does what Jesus has asked of me to do. I didn't really grow up with pets in my home, and then I married my wife and literally married a zookeeper. It's absolutely insane the amount of animals we've had in our home in the last 20 years. But what we really love is, what my family really loves is these dogs. And my wife has this one dog, his name is Dash, he's a golden retriever, and she loves this dog. If I asked her, hey, you have to choose Dash or me, I know she would choose me because we've made a covenant before God together, but it would take her a moment to get there. She'd have to think about it for a moment. So when we first had Dash, he was a puppy, and for the first year or so, he just tore our house apart. Chewed everything, every shoe that was on the ground. I mean, he'd chew holes through the wall. He tore ripped up carpet. Our backyard, he ripped the entire drip system up. So I have somebody come in and fix it, and then I get online, I'm like, how do you get dogs to stop chewing things? And they're like, cayenne pepper. So I went to Costco, got the biggest cayenne pepper thing I could get, went through my entire backyard, sprinkling the drip system with cayenne pepper. The next day, he chewed the entire drip system back up, and literally looked at me and said, thank you so much for putting some seasoning on that. That was delightful. He wouldn't walk on a leash. He would just choke himself the entire time. If you open the front door, he's gone. So finally I tell my wife, I'm like, CJ, this isn't working. We have to get this dog trained. So I see at PetSmart, they've got a group dog training class. So I'm like, all right, this will be good. So it's $180 for 10 lessons or whatever it is. So I sign up. And the first day of class, I'm bringing Dash. It's a Sunday afternoon, and he's choking himself while we're walking in, like the whole time. And I'm like, he's pulling, and I'm walking in, so I sit down. I'm already a little embarrassed because he's just coughing from choking himself the whole time on the leash. And he's sitting down next to me, and the lady comes out, the dog trainer. She comes out, and she begins the class. And about 10 minutes into the class, I realize she's talking to me, not my dog. And I was a little bit confused because I'm like, I don't know why you're talking to me. I'm not the problem. I'm not the one that needs to be trained. My dog does. Fix my dog. But I kind of let it go because I'm like, hey, it's the first class. Maybe she's just getting us, warmed up. Second class I came back to, she kept talking to me, not my dog. And I was legitimately like, I don't know what's going on here, but fix my dog. Fix my dog. I paid you money to fix my dog, not to talk to me. And I very quickly realized the dog trainers don't train dogs, they train owners. Wow. I was upset with it. I left. I didn't come back. I didn't come back to another class because I'm like, no, I paid money. I want you to fix my dog. I don't want you to teach me how to do all this. I want you to fix my dog. Right. Welcome to the church. We come in and there's responsibility. There's responsibility that's on our life. God asks us to do things. And we come into the church, we're like, hey, what are you doing to take care of this? What have you built to do this? I mean, I give every once in a while. So, what's going on here? And we've lost the concept of personal responsibility in the church. We've lost and it's one of the main, and families require maturity out of us. Guess who doesn't require maturity? Businesses. Families do. Families are like, no, that actually isn't going to work. That's actually your responsibility to run with. And this is, again, you got to hear me on this. We have programs. We have small groups, and we've got structures to flow people and all that type of stuff. But when we planted the church, it was very simple. We kept it simple. It's still simple to this day on purpose. But like we didn't have like a small group structure or anything set up. So people would come in that had been in the church for a long time. And they're like, hey, how do I get plugged in around here? And I was like, I don't know, invite somebody over to your house for dinner. And they were like, what? No. Like, what's your small group structure? What's your small group structure set up? How do I get plugged in? And I'm like, we don't have one, just go to Starbucks with somebody. And they were like legitimately confused on how they were supposed to build community if we didn't have a small group structure. I'm not opposed to small group structures. I have one. I'm opposed to people that somehow don't take personal responsibility to, God's called you to be in community. What are you doing about that? People, they might come up to me and go, hey, my neighbor just got saved. Where's the new believers class? In your living room. And I anoint you by the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit as the leader of that discipleship group. Because, listen, this may sound crazy, but it's not my responsibility to disciple your neighbor. It's my responsibility to equip you to be an effective discipler. It's my responsibility to make sure that you're encouraged and edified. It's my responsibility to make sure you're maturing. It's not my responsibility to disciple your neighbor. And this is what we've naturally flown into. It's like, hey, I'm here. I've got something. You got a new believers class somewhere, or I can drop this guy off? People all the time, they want to come up and say, what's our church? What do we do? What's our church doing for the poor? I'm like, I don't know. What are you doing for the poor? I don't know what you're doing for the poor. I'm not sure what everybody in here is doing for the poor. And what they want to know is, what's the 501c3 doing for the poor? Now listen, I'm not opposed to having programs for the poor in the church that are run by the church. But if your pastor never built a program to take care of the poor, would you still lean in and say, God, you've called me to take care of the poor? As a follower of Jesus, I have a mandate to take care of orphans, widows, the poor. What am I doing to take care of the poor? So personal responsibility begins to set in, and we begin to understand that if my pastor never puts a prayer gathering on, I'm called to pray, so I can go gather some people and pray. I can go disciple people. I can go get in community. I can lean in. This is one of the reasons why I believe we're not seeing cities impacted the level we should be, is because somehow we think it's somebody else's responsibility to do that. This is what begins to happen. It begins to go like, hey, somebody's praying, right? Somebody's praying somewhere, right? Those older ladies intercessor group, they're praying, aren't they? Because I think that's biblical, that only older ladies pray. And listen, I'm going to tell you right now, the church owes a ton to older ladies who are praying, because somehow they are the ones that are carrying this thing when the entire church is supposed to carry it. I remember when I went to college, and we lived about, the college was about 10 hours away from where I lived in Redding. It's just one, Interstate 5. Just goes straight from Southern California to Redding where I live. And we get in this truck with a friend, and we're going to drive home. And it's Pete's truck. He's driving. I'm in the middle seat. Steve, my friend, is there. And we're driving, and we get about an hour and a half away from Redding. We pull over to get some gas. We pull up to the gas pump. We get out. Pete goes in and pays for the gas. I go in and use the restroom. Steve's getting snacks. We finish all our work up there. We get in the truck, and we drive off. And about 15 minutes down the road, all of a sudden the truck just quits, just kind of lurches to a stop and breaks down. We coast to the side of the highway. And we're so close, and we're like, oh, what's going on? And I said, Pete, what's going on? He goes, I don't know, man. My truck's never broke down like this. And we look at the heat gauge, and it's all fine. And then I look at the gas gauge, and it's on empty. And I said, Pete, did you put gas in the truck? He goes, no, guys, don't look at me. I went in and paid for it. I thought Steve was putting it in. We both look at Steve. We're like, Steve, did you put gas in the truck? He goes, no, fellas. I was getting snacks. I thought Banny was putting it in. They both look at me. I'm like, don't look at me, guys. I was in the restroom. I thought Pete was putting gas in. We'd actually pulled up to the gas pump. paid for the gas, got snacks, used the restroom, got in, drove off, never put gas in the truck. This is what happens when we lose personal responsibility in the church. Somebody's praying, right? Somebody's praying for our city, right? I don't know, aren't you? Don't look at me. I'm not. That guy with the Christian t-shirt is, right? Like, my pastor is, right? He should be. I'm paying him to do that. Like, we begin to who's discipling? Who's doing community? And we begin to think, and everybody thinks it's somebody else's responsibility, and we begin to miss doing the very thing, the most important thing we're supposed to be doing. You know I love you, right? So, and listen, there's the family has a grace for maturing as well. I'm not upset with my son. See, it's very interesting that my son, he's 12. He's not helping a lot of Thanksgiving. I'm not mad at him. But if that's how he is at 22, we have an issue. My son right now, he's getting a little bit older, let's say 2 years ago, when he was 10. If I didn't externally motivate that boy, he would never take a shower. He'd never change his clothes. He would only eat salt and vinegar chips and cup of noodles. That would be his life. I have to help him out. I have to help him. Brush your teeth, take a shower, change your clothes. And I'm not mad at him about that, right? But if he is having that same problem at 22, we've got an issue and I haven't done my job. If he still doesn't change his clothes, brush his teeth, take a shower, if he still only eats a cup of noodles unless somebody holds his hand, we have an issue. The issue is not right now, are you doing it? It's that, no, what's required from you is maturity. And families, listen, families are the ones, this is why we're up in people's business. Because it's extremely alarming when somebody's not growing. In the natural, if my son at 12 stops physically growing, it is of great concern to me. I'm like, something is wrong. We need to take you to the doctor and find out why you're not growing. This is how families think. This is why, we should have this thing. When somebody comes up and goes, Austin, what's wrong? What do you mean? You haven't grown in 6 months. You don't look any more like Jesus today than you did 6 months ago. Something's wrong. You're not growing. You're not maturing. And you're like, whoa, why are you all up in my business? Like, why don't you back off? Families are the ones that are looking out for people's maturity and growth and requiring that and looking for that and expecting that, and not unusual when people are asking about it. Let me end with this. I believe that when it comes to the harvest, that the concept of family is going to be one of the key components to seeing the harvest come in 2 ways. One, we can talk about the harvest all we want, but if we don't talk about what they're coming into, it's an issue. God is bringing them into a family. He's bringing them into the family. There's people all around this city that are lonely, that don't know God. They need a family where they can encounter a father who loves them and sets them free, and a family that believes in them. So the harvest is important. But the other thing I believe is this. Healthy family, and I say healthy family because some of you like me may come from dysfunctional, unhealthy families. But healthy family is one of the most attractive things on the planet. There is something so attractive and appealing about healthy families. When families are interacting with each other, when they're laying their lives down for one another, when they're cheering each other on, when they're for each other, when they sacrifice, when they're there in the hard times, when they're there in the good times, when they challenge, when it's messy. It's something so beautiful about it. I'm going to throw my mom under the bus, but I grew up in a home where my mom was not a morning person. So she didn't wake up and make me breakfast. I had to get up on my own and pour my own bowl of cereal. Struggle is real. And but I had a friend a few streets over. His name was Peter, the Shelley family. And They were fantastic. His mom woke up every morning at 4:30, and he would wake up every morning at 6:30 to a hot meal. He would walk out of his room to biscuits and gravy, to waffles, to eggs, to bacon, to pancakes. He would walk out to that. So I'm sitting in my house one day eating my bowl of cereal, and I thought, Peter's mom has made breakfast this morning. And I was kind of a kid. I was pretty confident and had no boundaries. So I got on my bike. I rode over to their house. I walked in. I didn't even knock. I walked into their house, sat down at their table. Peter walked up. I'm like, how you doing, Peter? Mrs. Shelley. And I had breakfast with them. And I started just doing that. I would ride over to their house in the mornings and sit down at their table because I wanted breakfast. I'm telling you, there's something extremely appealing, extremely attractive about family. About family. God, and this is something that has to be bought into by everybody. Guys, if you can begin to think like this, it changes how you approach the church. You know, you have greeters outside, people that open the door and say hello, people that have signs up. I got up and 4 people said hello to me as I walked in today. That's a ministry that the church has. They've organized around that. People volunteer to be greeters. But here's the crazy thing. It's not their responsibility only to make sure people feel welcome at this church. Because, and here's the concept, if we all believe this is family, then I don't care what your personality is. I don't care if you're introvert or extrovert. If you are at your house and you put on a gathering at your house, you like we don't have greeters outside because it's a car lot. Again, if you work at a car lot, forgive me for this, but you know, sometimes at used car lots, they just got guys lined up, and then somebody walks in, they're immediately rushing over, and they're nice to you, and they're kind because they're trying to close a deal. Like this is not a car lot, it's a house. Which means this, if somebody walks in my door at my house at a gathering, there's not a chance I'm not walking up. Hey, how you doing? You good? Let me take your coat. Can I get you anything? Anybody you know here? Okay, listen, I'm cooking right now, but whatever else it is. And if I can't come, I'm shouting, hey, welcome, come on in. Like there's just a natural flow because it's my house. And I'll tell you this at Thanksgiving, and many times a lot of the cousins that are at college bring friends home for Thanksgiving. There is not a chance that I would let, if anybody that was a guest at Thanksgiving was sitting there by themselves, no way I'd walk by them. I'd stop. Hey, what's going on? You doing? You doing? How you doing? You don't know anybody? Come on, come with me real quick. And I'm going to have them come with me, and I'm going to introduce them to some people, and I'm going to have them come sit with me, not because I feel obligated, not because I'm trying to close a deal, not because that's what you're supposed to do at church, but because this is my house, and this is our family, and there's no way you're coming into my house and not feeling welcome. Not a chance that's going to happen. And I don't care if greeters missed you or not. You come into this place, people are going to say hi to you. They're going to welcome you. They're going to have you sit down with them. They're going to show interest. They're going to show care. They're going to love you because it's family. It's family. And I want to tell you this, that people can tell when they walk in that door. Is this a business or is it a family? Are people here so that somebody will just serve them and do their Christian life for them? Or is this somewhere where we lay our lives down for one another, where we serve one another, where we're for one another, where we sacrifice one another, where we've all come to honor and celebrate and encounter our Father who loves us, where we believe in one another? This is very obvious when you walk into places. And I don't need anybody to sign me up as a greeter to understand that. I don't need anybody. I don't have to be on the greeter ministry. I don't have to be, you need to be. But I don't have to be on the discipleship ministry. I don't have to be a small group leader. Those are all important things. But there's got to be something that gets in us that goes, oh, no, like, no. You're like, we have a couple in our church right now. This is the honest truth. They have heard this message, and they said, we need to do something. And so you know what they do I didn't organize this. This wasn't my idea. This isn't a program in our church. Every Sunday, they come into Sunday, and they meet. They're part of they serve. They're part of the team that greets and hosts, the ushers. They're part of the team. But when they sit down, when we have people greet one another, they greet one another, and they look for people that they've never met. And then after the service, they tell them, hey, can we take you to lunch? Can we take you to lunch? We'd love to take you to lunch. And so every Sunday, they just take people they haven't even met, and they just say, come to lunch with us. And they say the most amazing stories. They're, single moms that haven't been to church in 5 years, and people, and they've made these great connections. They're just like, yeah, this is what I dream about. Imagine if every single person leaned in and said, how am I going to make sure this is the best Thanksgiving gathering ever? How am I going to make sure this is the best family gathering ever? And how am I going to make sure that nobody comes into our home and doesn't feel welcomed and isn't maturing either? We want you to mature. We want you to grow. You know what the harvest is going to need? If you really do the math, the harvest is going to need fathers and mothers. If this church doubled tomorrow because the harvest came in, do we have the fathers and mothers? Not just the structures in place, the fathers and mothers. You know what the net is that God's building? It's not systems and structures, it's people. The net for the harvest is people. And this is what we long for, to be honest with you. I know it is for me. I want to be a part of a family. I don't want to be part of a business. I want to be part of a family. But the challenge for me is I didn't realize that requires some stuff. I didn't realize that I have to change the way I think about some things. And I didn't even realize I was approaching church at that level, but I am. And I just really encourage you this morning, any area of your life where you're somehow approaching the church as if it's a business, not a family, shift that. Ask God to give you a new perspective on that, and then just jump in. God's going to do something significant in this region. This is one of the best things you could do, is say, we're going to make this a family. And if my pastor never builds a prayer program, I'm going to pray. And if there's not a new believers class, I'm going to disciple new believers. I'm going to go find young believers. I'm going to go gather with people. I'm going to make sure, because I don't need somebody else to do my Christian life for me. I want to do my Christian life. I do need people to equip me and encourage me in it, though. Stand up with me. I'm going to turn this over, but let me just pray for you. God, so I know that in many ways I'm preaching to the choir in this room that this is the heart of Matt and Lisa in this house, to have a family, to have a place where the harvest comes in and is discipled and grown. And God, I just am so encouraged by the people in this room. Each person in here, you is a key part of your plan for this region. There's not one person in this room that is not a key component to what you intend to do in the Tri-Cities area. God, show us where we can plug in. God, show us where we can grab a potato peeler and peel potatoes, and show us how to shift our mindset. And then, God, we are asking that you would bring a harvest in. Those that don't know you, those that have never experienced your love, those that don't know there's a Father who loves them and can set them free, who sacrificed his only Son for them. May we be a family, God. May we be a family. May people come in here and encounter God, encounter a Father, because he's got sons and daughters that represent him so well.